7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Into another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We're sitting here in Studio A. I got Tony Johnson on mic 1, Mr. Giggly over there. What's up, Tony?
Not too much. Just I was trying to figure out where Studio B was, but I'm glad to be in A today.
Studio B is at Spike's house.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, which I don't think you've had the pleasure of attending yet.
I have not. I don't know if you're saying that in jest or if it's real, but no,
it's fine.
Good
looking little setup. It gives the dorm room vibe.
Okay, that can not necessarily be a bad thing. That could be good.
It's not a bad thing. It's just, it's a dorm room vibe. He's got the computer set up. He's got the gaming thing going on.
Oh, he's a big gamer?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Gamer.
Okay.
So, anyways, well, we appreciate you listening. That's it for us. I'm just kidding. We just wanted you to know what Studio B looked like. Just kidding. We are the Vegas Squares podcast. We are sitting here in studio. Tony Johnson on mic 1. Want to thank the sponsors, obviously 12 Ounce Sports Radio. If you're listening to us this is our Thursday podcast, listening on 12 Ounce Sports Radio. You can obviously catch all of our podcasts at vegassquares.com at any time you'd like. Just head over to the website, click the Listen Now tab. We have our podcast, our picks and chatter, and our snippets. All whatever you'd like to listen to, whatever tickles your fancy. I'm exhausted, dude. It's been a long 15 hours or so. Went to the Vegas Golden Knights game the other night, and then had to work, and it's been a power through session. And we all don't get to go home and go to sleep like you. Some of us have to work nights.
Yeah, I hear you. No, it feels like you're kind of at the end of the line, but this is at least a good way before you go down for some good sleep, certainly. Yeah.
That's why I bring in the big guns, so they make me look good, and I can sit back, and that's why you're here on mic 1. And, of course, Token Tony was supposed to join us, but I think he decided to hit the snooze button too many times. Nevertheless, it's Divisional Weekend here coming up. Let me finish thanking the sponsors, though, before we talk about Divisional Weekend. We had 12 Ounce Sports Radio, VGK Pop Sockets, ChaiPoker.com, Eric on the Web Productions, and our newest sponsorship, however you want to call it, is Vegas Puck Line. Sweet Vegas Golden Knights merch and apparel. VegasPuckline.com. You can go check out all that stuff. Pretty good group of guys over there. So tell them we sent you and get yourself a shirt. Even if you're not a VGK fan, they got pretty cool styles of other merchandise as well.
Is it just hockey over there, or where they do a lot of stuff?
It's mostly just hockey, but I think they've got a little small section of additional stuff as well. So the more I kind of check out what they got going on, the more I'll obviously have more information with that. Man, my leg is itchy right now. I know that you guys are all waiting.
Thanks. That's nice.
I know.
Good information.
I've been sitting here going, man, this is not like stop itching. But, it is Divisional Weekend. So, obviously, in the last podcast, we did talk a little bit early about how we felt about these games. Obviously, the Saturday games, you have Indianapolis and Kansas City. You have Dallas and L.A., the Rams, that being. And then in the Sunday games, you have the L.A. Clippers, as Spike likes to affectionately call them, traveling to New England to face the Patriots. And then you have the last game of the slate, which is Philadelphia and St. Nick traveling to New Orleans, hoping in their case to avenge a 48-10 loss.
Something. It might have even been 7. Might have been
48-7.
Yeah.
47-10.
Either way, it was a
drubbing.
Yeah, sure.
Here you go. Speaking of, look at the TV. Joe Namath doing Medicare commercials. Man. Whew. Did you see him the other day? The video of him. Where were they? I think they were at one of the college football playoff games, and he was just getting schmoozy with Maria Taylor.
Yes.
And I'm like, man, dude, Joe, in 2019, somebody's got to reel you in, bro.
Yeah, it's impossible.
I get it. That's his MO. But, remember when he had the Susie Colbert interview?
I do.
And I don't know if he was drunk or...
I think he was drunk, yeah.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel like they set him up. But, it is what it is. He's Joe Namath.
They had to have known before that interview that he was obviously wasted. And it was like, well, should we... I bet the discussion went, well, should we really do this? And they're like, well, yeah,
I think it took about
Namath.
2 seconds for him to say, yes, we're going to get some fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
Joe Namath and Maury are looking more and more like the same. Like, Maury Povich are looking more and more like the same person every day. Like, have you ever seen them in the same room at the same time?
I have not.
I know. I'm starting to believe that Maury was actually the guy who made the guarantee for the Jets.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a career change.
Yeah. He decided to go into paternity test daytime shows. Nevertheless, let's kind of take an early look at some of these games. I know it's already Thursday. If you're listening on 12 on Sports Radio, this podcast was recorded on Wednesday when we're talking here. But what's the most intriguing kind of storyline of these 4 games in your mind?
I think for me, it's the rise here and the rebound, I would say, of Andrew Luck. So the rise of, I think, of Indy, becoming more of a defensive team when they were, a complete train wreck last year.
That's fair. Yeah, they got a pulse this year.
Yeah, certainly. And then, of course, Luck coming back and Indy winning, 10 out of their last 11 now and facing a number 1 seeded Kansas City team, which to me, and I think a lot of other people as well, seem like they have some glaring issues, especially on the defensive side of the ball for them, and it's one of those 1 seeds that you can only take with a grain of salt. It's not doesn't has that dominance kind of feel to it like we've seen in maybe other times in years past. In both conferences, we've seen some really, really good teams throughout the year. I'm not trying to downplay Kansas City. They're certainly obviously very good, but when you give up that many yards and certainly points included on defense, you're always kind of seemingly fallible to lose a game here and there. And
well, yeah, eventually, they always kind of have that in any sport. When the offense goes cold, defense wins championships, and Kansas City does none of that on the defensive side of the ball. You're right. Yeah, it's kind of one of those concepts. At some point, Kansas City has to make a stop, and the question is can they? And it may not be this week. It may be next week against a familiar foe in L.A. or New England. Or it could be the Super Bowl at some point. At some point, they're not going to be able to put up 45 points a game.
Right.
They're not going to get calls. They're without Kareem Hunt, which is going to matter. At some point, that's going to matter, in my opinion.
Sure.
And they've shown in the biggest games so far, I think they've come up short, whether they've been on the road or at home. Against the Chargers, the Rams, the Patriots. The only game I thought that they really had to play a barn burner with and came out on top was the Ravens. That overtime game against the Ravens at home. Which, good, beneficial for them as they do get all these games the rest of the season at home, with obviously the exception of the Super Bowl. But, the most intriguing storyline, at least personally for me, other than the fact that I'm not doubting Nick Foles anymore in my life. I'm not betting on him. I'm not betting against him. I'm just going to enjoy the sheer magic that is him. But from a personal standpoint, this feels like the first year, and obviously, given the track record, it's easy to say this, but this feels like the first year in the divisional round. I don't feel confident. I can't say that it's not going to happen. I just don't feel as confident that we're penciling New England into the AFC title game.
Yeah.
Every year, especially last year when it's like, okay, they got to play the Titans. All right, well, let's pencil that one in. A few years against a lot of teams, the Jets. It just, to me, this year feels like I don't know if it's more of the case of the Chargers themselves or the mortality of the New England team. I could go down the list, like you said. Josh Gordon's gone. Julian Edelman is. He said he had a little bit of a down year. Obviously, he was suspended for the first 4, but he came back off the ACL. Hasn't been as explosive.
I agree.
Rob Gronkowski, that's low-hanging fruit. And Tom Brady's 41 and looked a little bit mortal this year. And the only thing I can say is, like I said in the last podcast, is I believe that Belichick probably schemed and planned more for L.A., thinking that they were probably going to win the game. So he's probably spent about a week and a half preparing for the Chargers.
And that may help quite a bit, because you had mentioned that before, and certainly they got started early, for either team, and that's always a benefit anyway. But I would expect, as you said, that probably more time was spent. on this Chargers team. I mean, this is a Chargers team that won more games than they did, than New England did during the season. So,
it's true. Yeah.
It's an impressive team here. And another thing that's I know I don't really get into game times and travel and stuff like that. I don't really take into account too much. But this is the second straight week that the Chargers will be playing not only across the country but in that early game time as well.
So now the question is did they even go back home?
I would expect so. Yes, because that's where all their normal practice facilities and
right. But
like
what you want to do is kind of simulate the environment, stay on the East, get your body acclimated. I mean, New England and LA are going to have vastly different temperatures come game time on Sunday.
No, it's always an issue. I agree. My guess is they're trying to simulate it like it's just another week, in the NFL where you go home and then you leave again, to go for another away game. I'm
more
keep
likely,
that continuity.
I just haven't seen anything either way.
I haven't either. No, we don't know per se. We probably something would have been said if they were staying out there the whole week, because I think that's a little bit more abnormal. Not to say it's wrong or not, who knows, but
yeah.
Yeah, I would guess that they're going to be treating it more like a regular game. But as you said, that's a great thing about the temperature change to it. So you can't really simulate that in practice because there is really no way.
Unless
to
you
do
have
it.
an indoor facility, and even then you're just making it cold. You're not making it windy or even the snow or the elements
for
in
sure.
that spot. Another kind of thing that is kind of it's more of a foreshadowing or a speculation kind of thing. But I start to think, okay, look, we look at the coaching carousel that's going on right now. Everybody's looking for the next Sean McVay, right? That's the kind of the thing that we're all...
Seems to be the prototype.
That's the hot commodity or blah, blah, blah. But my theory is Dallas is playing hot football, correct?
Definitely. They did what they needed to win the division, and I think they looked quite good in this first playoff game to me. I thought they played pretty well overall.
So you have first-year head coach Sean McVay goes in, has a good season with Jared Goff. They get beat by the Falcons. Falcons come in and beat them. Year number 2, another good season. I believe they were 13-3.
Yes.
Another good season, home playoff game. They get the bye week this time, and Dallas comes in and beat them. Now we're starting to look at, okay, well, Sean McVay may only be so good. And now all this hot commodity, I need this, I need that. We just saw Cliff Kingsbury, similar prototype, get hired. And, well, maybe Sean McVay has a little bit of the fraud.
Well, it's still very early. It's very, very early in his tenure. This is the second year of maybe a 20-plus coaching career potentially, for him. So this is certainly very, very young in his tenure. I think if he does have the longevity,
I'm not saying they need to fire him or write him off. I'm just starting to say we're starting to see the trend almost follow, and with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 years, it almost seems to follow the Andy Reid model. Really, really good regular season, flame out with bad clock management or poor offensive showings in the first or second round of the playoffs. Andy Reid got to what, 1 Super Bowl?
Mm-hmm. Just the one, just the one with Philly.
Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that Andy Reid's not a fantastic coach, but it feels like sometimes it only gets you so far.
Yeah, no, and I think we could make more of a discussion about Andy Reid in that sense. But to me, there's still quite a bit of randomness with what can happen from year to year in the playoffs. With just one game, obviously, for move on or go home. I
agree with that, but 2 home games in a row. The Falcons put a hurt on them. The Falcons just destroyed them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and if Dallas comes in and does the same thing, I think you have to start to. Again, he's not on a hot seat. There's no issues. There's no debates. I just don't think it should. I think it's going to go unnoticed, and I don't think it should.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't think it necessarily should either. And but yeah, it'll be something. I think you said it best. If they get beaten handily by Dallas, that would be a really start to cause, or at least take a look at. And I'm sure Sean will himself. I think there's no doubt that he'll definitely take the first look at himself and be like, okay, we need to do things definitely differently, in the playoffs going forward in the years to come, because you just can't be blown out like this, in 2 consecutive years at home. And especially, I think this season here, I think the Atlanta team last year was definitely more well regarded than this Dallas. Not that this Dallas team isn't regarded nicely. I think doesn't to me feel the same way, just because of the quarterback position, probably more so than anything else. Is certainly Matty Ice is going to be a more regarded and feared player facing than Dak Prescott. So that's my take on it. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think definitely even if they lose the game, being a 7-point favorite, and I think a pretty strong backed team here by most sports fans or football fans that they're very much expected to win this game. So I think they will take a long look at what needs to be changed if they lose this one.
Yeah, and I think that goes for all 4 home teams. Obviously the expectation of winning is key because, I mean, we're ready to put pretty much 3 of these guys in the Super Bowl: Dallas, LA, Kansas City, and New Orleans. Which, if LA and New Orleans advance, that's going to set up for a hell of a showdown in the NFC Championship.
Oh yeah, it's very true.
But speaking of New Orleans, I mean, obviously we just talked about what they did to Philadelphia last time at home, and looking obviously to repeat. A lot of people aren't giving Philadelphia a chance, and again, I'm not betting against Nick Foles. I don't think they're going to win this game. Obviously, they're the Eagles, but I mean, it's even in your own building, it's really hard to beat a team twice.
Yeah, I mean, technically it is tough. I think the 3 times is the one that can be, if you have very similar teams, I think 3 times is the one that's very, very, very difficult. But yeah, the second time, yes, to me, I'm in the camp, and I'm not usually in the general public kind of camp for a lot of these, favorite type of discussions. But to me, I think there's one team is significantly better than the other team, and so when you have that much of a difference, in my opinion, especially I think if you look at offensively and what New Orleans can do both with run and pass, and it's a very, very difficult team to prepare for because they have so many guys that can touch the ball and score at will almost. At least that's the way I sort of see it. So
that's fair, yeah.
And Philadelphia just running the football, they just don't have this option. I mean, I don't even know if Josh Adams or if he's even healthy or he's going to play. But in this upcoming game, but either way, even if he does, it's still him and Smallwood that are really going to try to carry the load here and at least give the other side, give the defense a different look, because you can't. I mean, certainly can't be throwing the ball on every down, but it's tough to do without much of a running game. And there's a reason why I think Philly had to scratch and claw just to get into the playoffs at 9-7, and I think it's going to be a very, very tough game for them. No 48-7 or whatever it was in the previous time, but certainly I think it'll be a relatively dominant performance from New Orleans, in my opinion.
Yeah. Does that make you kind of want to start looking at your Sproles props?
Yeah. No, I've put them up. I've got a couple of things listed here. Obviously, the props aren't up yet, although probably by the tail end of Thursday when this gets aired, they will start to come out, especially at, I think William Hill is usually pretty early on those. But yeah, I've already made a notation here for Sproles on the over receiving yards. I had the rushing yards last week, but I just don't think they're going to be able to move the ball at all on the ground. So, and my guess is as the game wears on and they get behind in this game, that we won't see a lot of Smallwood, whether Adams plays or not, and I think it'll be more Sproles, not just on third down, but maybe on nearly every down. And I'm also looking at Nelson Aguilar for his receiving yards over. I think he's had a couple of down weeks in a row, and this is a game where they're going to have to stretch it out and take some risk. He would be the guy there, essentially. So, and Alshon, I think, having a really big game last week, and it was a big one for him in a couple of different ways. I think, going back to Chicago, where there was still a little bit of animosity on both sides with how the lack of contract extension went down. So those are the two guys I have focused on there, and then I'm trying to figure out if I want to be laying New Orleans in the points here. Just 8 points or 8.5 or whatever it might be is quite a bit, but just to me this feels very unfortunate. Like you just led this topic, that it feels like one team is really significantly better than the other. So that's it.
That's fair. Well, we talked about the quarterbacks a little bit, but I guess my question would be to you is, at this juncture, who is the best quarterback of the 8?
Ooh, It's an interesting question. Wow. So just to go with this discussion, we're talking about not necessarily going forward as a player, but like who we like in this run of the playoffs type of. Because it's hard to put Drew Brees and like Pat Mahomes in the same sort of categories, because obviously one is at the end, one's at the beginning.
Yeah, the body of work.
Right.
We'll try it both. I mean, obviously, legacy-wise, that eliminates half the field.
Sure.
Especially the Saturday half.
Yeah. I was just going to say it's the early games. Yes.
It eliminates. I mean, it almost seems like the young bucks are all playing on Saturday, and all of the vintage quarterbacks are playing on Sunday. Because I kind of wrote. I mean, I figure Foles is effectively a journeyman.
Yeah.
Effectively a veteran at this point. But,
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, building a team around right now. I mean, it's obviously probably Mahomes or Goff or even Luck.
Right. No. Yeah.
The most talented quarterback right now. I mean, just of the 8 is
Mahomes. In my opinion, that's the guy I would want to build the team around. I'm not necessarily all the way sold on Jared Goff. I still think that there's a lot of things that he doesn't do all that well, and I think he's been a little bit of a product of being in a really, really good, well-schemed and smart offense. And I'm not like trying to downplay what he's done. Certainly you still have to make the passes and you still got to play. But I think that helps quite a bit, and also having maybe the number one running back on your team certainly is always a benefit. So my thing would be, and again, Mahomes for the same way, you can make another good argument that any Andy Reid quarterback is going to be a leg up on most others. But Mahomes seems to have the most talent for what I've seen. Just the plays he can create, his mind while in the game, the no-look passes and things along those lines. It feels like he was really this position, or the position, of quarterback in the NFL, just seems like it fits him extremely well. So that would be the guy there. But again, in a tight game here right now, maybe on the flip side, in this 2018-19 season, I would go with two of the strong veterans on Sunday, whether it be Brees or Brady at this point. I think they're relatively interchangeable in the sense of that you kind of have a pretty good idea of what you're going to get towards the end of the game. They're just not going to make gross mistakes. Brees, I think, is in a better spot because he's just got a lot of better players around him at this point, and he's got definitely.
You could almost say that for his whole career. He's had better players around him. For sure. And the road this year, no question, being able to play Philly versus the Chargers. Obviously, you'd much rather face Philly than the Chargers. I think, no doubt. So, yeah, it's that would be the guys that I would lean on because we don't know what we're going to get necessarily from Pat Mahomes in a big game if they get to the AFC Championship, and we haven't seen him in that spot. So yeah,
it's unknown.
Yeah, I look at New Orleans, and obviously, like you talked about, obviously they're probably a step above Philly, maybe even 2 or 3. But I kind of wonder, and they had one big game this year against LA. It was a shootout. The defense didn't play. It's hard to say they didn't play well. LA's got a dynamic offense, and they played on turf, so that's going to obviously favor offensive football. But I feel like. And I hate to use this word, and a lot of people I saw thrown around on Twitter, I feel like there's a fraudulent sense to the Saints. Not in fraudulent in the sense they're going to get walloped by Philly or lose this game, but I feel like the fact that they only had the one big game, the NFC South, which was once thought to be any 3 of those teams, with the Panthers and the Falcons, could have been interchangeable Super Bowl contenders. And they all finished 7-9 or worse. So I'm wondering where New Orleans is. Let's use the college term. Their strength of schedule. I'm wondering where it sits, or their actual ability to compete in a winner-go-home game. I know the good thing for them is obviously they get to be at home. But another team, if LA happens to advance here. Revenge matchup inside the Dome again. I don't know. Something about New Orleans just smells fishy to me.
Okay.
And I can't put my finger on it. I don't know if it's going to be the lack of defense. They've been up and down defensively this year, and there's been games where Drew Brees hasn't been Drew Brees, like of old, and that's been okay because Kamara and Ingram have been able to shoulder the load.
Yeah.
And this new guy, Hill, I don't know if he's new. I don't know how many years he's been with the Saints.
Yeah,
but
not so long.
Yeah, I mean, the point being is that, I don't know, something just doesn't smell right out of New Orleans as far as, I mean, with the 4 teams left, I mean, they're definitely equal to or greater than all the other ones. But I can't find in the NFC just that overwhelming team, that dominating team. And to me, the public's going to say New Orleans, and I don't know if I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's tough. Yeah, no, I don't think it's one and the rest. I'm with you there. Certainly, them and the Rams, I think, are the 2 teams that are the closest, at least in this sense of. And in my opinion, Dallas is still a step below those 2. I know that Dallas has played some really, really strong games here, as you noted in the latter part of the year, and beating New Orleans.
Well, they beat New Orleans. Yeah. They've been able to play solid defense. If Zeke can 125, 140,
he's really that.
They don't lose.
Yeah,
they just don't.
It's tough to stop. It's one of those, we're such a passing league and time, in the NFL, but we watch a guy that can run still for 140, and it's really hard to beat a team like that. They just hold the ball for so long and then score on the end of these drives.
Well, don't let that stuff fool you. Coordinators and coaches will tell you, I don't care how much of a passing, quote-unquote, passing league it is.
Right.
If we can't establish the run.
Sure.
I mean, look how many times this year with many quarterbacks, Breeze being one, Brady being one, Prescott being another.
Yeah.
I could go up and down the score sheets, the box scores. There are many instances of a lot of passing league quarterbacks throwing for under 200 yards.
It's true.
In games.
It's very true.
And I'm not even calling out Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
I'm not even putting Lamar Jackson in this. I mean, he was basically I could look at his box score every week.
Right.
But I'm looking at a lot of box scores, and I see a lot of sub 200 games.
Yeah.
But you establish a run with Sony Michel. You establish a run with Kamara and Ingram. You established the run with Ezekiel Elliott. You established the run with Gus Edwards in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Mahomes needed a little bit of a pick-me-up, they had Kareem Hunt there.
He was great in the middle part of the year.
Marlon Mack came back from injury. He's been able to sustain, immediate impact offense to help out Andrew Luck. I mean,
that's a good point.
Andrew Luck made Eric Ebron look like an all-pro.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we're going to see, especially now going into playoffs where the whistle gets swallowed. I think the run is more important now than ever. And I think the teams, it's hard to really say that everybody doesn't have a good running back. I mean, every single team left in the playoffs with the exception of Kansas City, maybe Philadelphia, I guess. If Adams can play, I think he's a quality running back, and he's healthy. But, I mean, with the exception of Kansas City, I think everybody has pretty quality running backs.
Yeah, and that's the knock, I think, in this game. If you're going to be against the Rams and be a Dallas backer in this one, is that the Rams have been really subpar, against the run. They have a lot of
shocking considering they have Sue and Donald and Jalen. What is his name? Not Jalen Foster. What's that guy they traded for? Dante Fowler.
Oh yes.
I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, it's from Detroit. Is that right?
No, he came from Jacksonville.
Jacksonville guy. Okay, yeah. No, that's a good point. Well, from what I've heard or read, that they get a little bit fancy with some of the things that they do to rush the passer, and they sort of don't really play in the textbook sort of way, and they miss too many tackles on the line from what I've heard, and certainly giving up 5.1 yards a carry or whatever it's been this year is a testament to that, and that's what. And as you said, I think it's the if you can get the Zeke Elliott sort of train going early on, and if Dallas can establish a run and at least get these chunk plays that we've seen, these last few weeks, that's their ticket. But obviously, yeah, if you have to rely on Dak Prescott to create and move out of the pocket, and he takes a lot of hits too himself. He's not very good at keeping his body and saving himself, and it's one of those spots where things like this can happen in a game, and you take too many hits, and it's a scary thing. So with a team like this, but yeah, I don't know. Dallas to me is either going to stay in this game based on what we've talked about, or I think if the Rams show up, and we've seen some of the games they played, especially in the early to middle part of the season when they were really dominant. I think this one could get really, really far away as well too, very far away.
Yeah, and the issue I have here is from a betting standpoint. So let's get into that mindset. Yeah. Let's put that cap on.
Definitely.
Traditionally, statistically, betting-wise, has shown that favorites dominate divisional weekend after we get that wild card. The Dogs, Paradise, and wild card. Which is kind of concerning to me because out of the 4 games, I like 3 dogs. So that really doesn't make me feel very good.
Right.
Now, I know you haven't made official plays. You don't have official picks. Our official picks come out Saturday morning. We'll be recording them Friday night for our Saturday morning podcast. I think you're going to be Token's proxy again.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Another 7-in-1 week we're looking forward to.
Shut up. I hope
Big Token, you better come through.
I hope he breaks you off a little bit there.
If he goes 7-1 again, he should.
Yeah, because you did so much. I just read him over the radio.
Yeah, I feel good about that. With that said, he should actually make a few wagers this time, though. I can't believe he didn't.
He'll go 1-7 if he actually bets them.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay,
so
that's how it should go. Yeah.
Off the bat, researching. Yeah, exactly. When I finally make a bet, then I go 1-8. Yeah. So let's look at them. I mean, I don't want to break down each one individually, but
sure.
Where are you looking at as far as? I know you haven't made official plays. I know you haven't. You talked about you're not fully recapped or previewed from your. I mean, you're a professional handicapper. So where are you at this stage? It's Wednesday. Excuse me. Where are you at with the games right now?
So yeah, I'm in the phase right now, and this is kind of a. Make it up as you go along. I don't think there's exactly a exact science to when you should be looking at certain things or not. I think this time of the week is good for obviously keeping up with news. If anything comes out with injuries, players saying things that might be controversial or crazy, coaches, things like that. I think it's always good to keep an eye on what's going on with the news. And then for me, I'm just preparing for a lot of player props potentially, just kind of seeing some of the names that I might like for a quality game versus not. I just kind of have some names and listed of what I would like theoretically on whether it's a receiver in receiving yards or a running back, with an over-under on their rush yards or carries or whatever the case could be. So just kind of preparing it for whatever the number could potentially be because I'm kind of ready to go. We've analyzed the teams now for a season. I think we have a pretty good idea of sort of the what we're going to get from a lot of these clubs. Obviously, with game flow and different things dictates, you never really know exactly what's going to happen, obviously, but you have a pretty good idea of what we see from these teams week to week. So that's pretty much it. And then, you kind of make some notes, for the games or whatever, and then try to pull it all together by Thursday or Friday, and then get everything situated. So, but I'll start, I think, with the first game. We might as well start right away with the Indy Kansas City game, and I think this is one of those that I'm really starting to feel like as these days and hours really progress, that the public is really, really focused in on how much offense we're going to see from this crazy good Kansas City team. And Andrew Luck seems unstoppable at this point. Now they have a great running back and things like that. And I feel like we're not talking about nearly as much as the rise of Indy's defense and how good they've been throughout this big winning streak. And now
I think we've been talking about.
Well, I know. Yes.
I don't think the four-letter networks.
Yes, that was what I was trying. Yes, you know what I was trying to say exactly.
Yeah.
No, we certainly have brought that up, and it's a correct thing to say. But and on the flip side, Kansas City now has had a couple of weeks off. Obviously, with that, you get some extra time to prepare.
Right, and I hate to interrupt you. I apologize.
No,
good.
But
we talked about New England prepping for LA.
Yeah.
Do you think Andy Reid thought Indianapolis would be his opponent?
My guess is I don't think there was a strong lean probably on either side. Certainly being able to get started in any sense is always great, but
right.
My guess is there was not any sort of
I'm sure at
strong
21-0 he probably said, all right, let's prepare.
There you go. Yeah, no, that was probably something. You're throwing out all those notes that you had on Houston.
Yeah,
It's like,
here's Deshaun Watson's notes in the garbage. We'll save that for next year.
I'm not going to get those 10 hours back that we just took. That's okay. But, I would think that, it was a split time in that sense. But even on the defensive side, while Kansas City still has some certainly glaring holes, I mean, a couple of weeks off in a spot where you're going to see some subpar weather, and I think that seems to be in the forecast at this point as well. you're gonna have these lulling points of spots, I think, in this game where we're gonna have back-to-back punts and a few turnovers here and there and things like that, and I just can't see this game going off the rails like we initially might think, or if this was being played in a neutral site or heaven forbid an Indy, and where you could see both of these offense kind of in their heyday, but I don't think we're going to see that in this game. I think this is going to be a much more controlled pace, controlled game. The lack of Kareem Hunt, I think, has also not been talked about nearly as much, and is going to affect Kansas City at some point here. They are just not as dynamic of a team without him on the field. There's simply no argument there. So Damian Williams has been a fine fill-in here, but he is not the same runner, not even close, especially near the goal line, short yardage situations. It's really where Kareem Hunt, to me, that's the biggest shocker to me of how good of an NFL player he had been up to this point, is how good he was in those short yardage situations. It was a shock from watching him at Toledo when he didn't seem like he could do that very well. So, that's my take on this game. So I'm heavily leaning towards the under here. I like how it's gone up a little bit, too, opened around 56, now in the 57-ish range. I think that's really, really good there. So that's my take, at least on the first one.
Yeah, especially, you look at the trends here with both teams. Kansas City at home 7-1, scoring 32 points, giving up 18, which sounds really good for a defense that doesn't play. And then you have Indianapolis on the road scoring 23, giving up 21. All trends really, even the points for and the points against trends point towards under the total as well. It's an interesting matchup. I feel like KC is just they're going to get theirs. Even with, you talked about the improved, revamped defense. Andy Reid will find a way, and the question will be: is Indianapolis going to have to play catch up, or are they going to be in a ball game here? That's going to be the kind of the thing. What are you seeing for temperatures in this spot? Or weather? Is it supposed to snow, a little bit of rain, or just be cold?
From what I understand, snow/rain all up from Friday through Saturday, and relatively cold. So,
and that number's already up to 5.5 at this point. What about Dallas and LA? Where do you early action on that?
To me, this is the hardest spot here. I think from some of the things I've said earlier, just because the great running attack of Dallas is the equalizer in this game, and it's very, very difficult to comprehend Zeke not being able to find some room and space against a really porous rush defense. While they rush the passer extremely well, and they have two quality veteran corners, they just don't. They're just not great against the run. They simply aren't, and they haven't been all year. It's one of those things. It's not like it's been more of a recent trend. While they haven't been as good defensively in the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's been the whole season. But I don't know what to do with that per se. How good. Where are we going to see LA in this offense? They've lost some people too. I think the Cooper Kupp loss. Has certainly been something. It
seemed to matter, yeah.
It does, yeah, and it's surprising that it has. And where are we with Todd Gurley? Is he 100% healthy? The word is that he is, that he's actually in a really good condition, but we don't really know per se until we see him on the field, and even so, necessarily he still may not be 100%. So I don't know in that sense either. That's always a little bit of a scary thing. So this is one of those games that I'm in a strong mode to stay away from here. To me, I do think that if all those answers are going to be okay, and the Rams are not terrible, on their line, their defensive line, and if Gurley is 100%, and if Jared Goff is as accurate as he had been in the early part of the season, then I do think we have a chance to get a Rams kind of dominant game. But that's too many questions to me. There's too many variations of this game for me to be confident really in any sense, and that goes along with the total, I think, too, because again, we don't know what necessarily kind of game we're going to see. I'm interested in some prop bets potentially here. I want to see what number we come up with for Goff and passing yards. If Cole Beasley is going to definitely play in his numbers, show up there. He's a guy that I think that might kind of get lost as well, especially if he's not really all that healthy. But if we can get a 40-50 ish type of number on his receiving yards, that's definitely an under I'm going to be looking towards as well. So, but we'll see what comes out. You don't know until it comes out. But for the game, I wish I had at least a lean or something like that. But at this point, I really have no idea. No idea.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the toughest one to look at as far as just a flat 7 number right there. And a 50 burger, right at the total 49.5. It's not a fun one to sit on the side because, all intents and purposes, you could do a lot of research and still push in this spot.
True. That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, no, it's that the 7 seems to make a lot of sense. Yeah, it's one of those lines, as you said. You could kind of predicted the line almost too. before it came out, it was really, I think, probably a lot of people that were doing the line prediction probably really close to what it ended up being. Yeah.
Because you look at the two NFCs have the two NFC matchups have the biggest point spreads, and then you have the two AFC matchups that are very, very closer to the 0. In the beginning of the year, we all felt that the NFC probably had the most competitive Super Bowl contending teams. But as we get to the Final Four, whatever reason you wanted to define, we have the biggest margins of what Vegas believes is the biggest margins of talent here.
Yeah, that's. I think the 1 and 2 seeds are much stronger in the NFC than the AFC. I agree with this sentiment. It's one of the things that makes sense to me. Also, I think the other thing to note is certainly this is not those same New England teams from many years back. With the players change and certainly a lot of guys that are much older. That's you don't have that sense and feel of dominance that you have in the previous start. Not to say they can't win this. Of course they can win this game, but they're a 4-point favorite for a reason. But you don't have that sense of that it's a known commodity and it's who are they going to actually play in the AFC Championship. That's kind of the question you were always asking. We're not asking that anymore. We know they're in a game.
Yeah, and even with that, take a look at the flip side. We always like to kind of find out where Vegas sits. All the money is going, or at least all the action's going in on the Chargers. Mm-hmm. But if you try to look at it from a cynical point of view, New England, a 4-point favorite at home where they've, like you said, they've been in 7 straight AFC championship. We don't pencil them in, we pen them in to that spot.
That's a good point, I know.
Does it almost seem like they're just begging you to take the Clippers?
Mm-hmm. It does. As the week progresses, it's this. I get that exact same feeling. That was the game when the lines opened up that I really kind of liked. Was definitely the Chargers here getting some points, but now.
Because
I'm starting to kind of, I'm questioning
from an objective point of view, I realistically, and maybe it's just me being fooled, I feel, okay, I look at the thinnest spread here with New England, I feel like New England probably could win this game. This is easy to say, could win this game by 2 touchdowns. I feel like they're going to, and I don't know if that's my official.
Wow.
I don't know if I'm officially taking that. It might be the smart money just to take the Chargers, and it'd probably be a close game. But I feel like New England's going to be business as usual, and like you said, New England 2 weeks to prepare for an opponent. It's almost like Nick Saban preparing, for a month on an opponent. Yeah. And this on the flip side, another game where you're talking about, with Dallas and LA. I just find myself on the dogs in the wrong spot, and I find myself on the favorites in the wrong spot in my own mind.
That's not a fun spot to be in.
What I'm saying is that a lot of people. Believe LA is the far superior talented team. A lot of people believe New Orleans is the far superior talented team. A lot of people believe that LA and New England are probably more neck and neck than initial glance, And then a lot of people believe that Kansas City is a more superior team. But I find myself, where am I going with this? I find myself, I love Kansas City despite the fact they can't play defense. I love New England. Based on the fact that they've gotten so much time to prepare and rest up and get healthy. I don't know. It's just something just doesn't feel right, and maybe it goes back to the whole thing. It's like I love a lot of dogs this week, and this is the week notoriously for favorites.
Yeah, it's true, and it's interesting we bring that up. Is the public. The general public seem to get on the underdogs in Wild Card Weekend too. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen them really dominate, and the public really went into that faction too, so they actually were able to get some hay against the books.
But that's what
this
usually
last
kind
week,
of
so
happens
it's
the
nice,
last few
you know?
weeks is
Yeah.
they get that hay against the books, and then they get big-headed in the divisional round. They say, thank you.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Oh, believe
It's
me.
the same with
I know the favorite. Yeah.
NCAA March Madness. The first and second round, it's a dog's paradise.
Yeah.
And then, the big boys
Favorites start to
come to play.
Right. No, exactly. So but it'll be interesting to see if the public, because the public money actually does sway these lines, a little bit in the playoffs. It's actually one of the few times that it really starts to move because people are betting, obviously large chunks of money on these games. So, yeah, we'll see.
Dogs are getting action according to this. I mean, you have Indianapolis 57%.
That's interesting.
You have Dallas 56%, Indy 65%, and LA 61% action. So you're right. I mean, the dogs are all going on it.
Yeah.
And the thing is I usually, like I said, I've kind of found out this trend, quote unquote, about 3 years ago. It's
right.
Dog's Paradise the first week. Mm-hmm. Favorites usually get the book's money back. I just can't find myself liking the two favorites at all in the NFC.
Wow, that's interesting.
And they are, and if you played the matchups 100 times, I think they are head and shoulders above both the other teams, but. And I don't know. It's a tough one to really say. I mean, I'm going to have to eventually make a pick for our prop bet.
That's the great thing about it is that we finally have to hear from you at some point. So it's good.
Well, the reason I say the reason I'm getting all around to this, I actually believe for real money betting, I might not make a pick. I may not bet this weekend.
All 4 games?
All 4 games.
Really?
I have no definitive opinion. The only thing I might actually bet is New England -4.
Okay, wow.
And even then, I'm like, meh. It's already I already have a vested interest. I might just stay away.
True. Yeah, you certainly don't need to cash a ticket to feel good about a win. Yeah.
So that's kind of my big culmination. Is okay. It's Wednesday afternoon. We've known these lines for 3-4 days now.
Sure.
And nothing in my mind has moved one way or the other.
Tough week. No, it's tough. I don't disagree with that faction. I'm not as much on the dog paradise as you are. I don't.
Again, I'm not. I'm not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Okay. True.
I'm saying if you put gun to my head,
right.
Philly and Dallas, I'd probably take the points.
Sure. Yeah. No.
Kansas City, New England. I'm feeling more confident in those, and maybe it's just because of the smaller spread. I don't know.
Maybe.
And the thing is New Orleans, the home field advantage and the previous game should tell me that like this should be why. What am I even looking at? I mean, but I don't know. It just doesn't smell right to me. And I mean, I don't feel confident telling people on Friday to tail my picks. Let me just put that out there. On my picks for our prop bet, I don't feel confident in you tailing them.
That's worthwhile information. No, not knowing something is sometimes just as important as knowing something. So yeah, it can be worthwhile for sure. And I don't disagree with you that these are tough games. They're tough games to handicap. You get into this part of the season, in the playoffs, it's tough because there's not a lot of weakness, for a lot of these teams. So it's hard to handicap when you don't see a lot of weakness.
So yeah, I mean, speaking of eventually picking a game, I have to give you shit because you talked me all the way. I think this is the last time I'm letting you talk me all the way.
All right.
But I loved Clemson.
Yeah.
Going into the playoff.
You did. That's true. You did mention that.
And I already had the Clemson moneyline ticket, so it was okay. But for some reason, you and Token with your men amongst boys argument really swayed me, and I'm kicking myself. But at the same time, it was just a weird one, and you had me so confident that Trevor Lawrence was going to show his colors, true freshman colors, and that Nick Saban, that there was just no. It's hard to say. It really is. It's just the way you guys presented the argument had me convinced. Well, and I'm not trying to poo-poo you guys. But,
no, that's fine. Hopefully it was just you and not the rest of the listeners out there.
But I will say that with all the different bets I had out there with Clemson, I ended up a winner. But
good.
if I'd have just ignored you guys and maybe gone and got a soda while you guys were talking.
Yeah.
But 5.5. I mean, Alabama. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad bet. It's just, did you see this? I mean, 28-point beatdown.
No, I don't think. I certainly don't think anybody necessarily saw certainly a second half just absolute beating.
They scored nothing.
Yeah, it was really one-sided. So, and add to that, I certainly definitely called not only did I get the game wrong in the sense of the winner loser spread what have you, but it was the flow of the game and the way the game sort of developed. I was very surprised at the amount of chunk plays both teams were able to get. Both on the ground and in the air. Obviously, most of what Clemson was in the air.
We talked about so much of both of these defenses.
Yeah.
And for the offenses in both, Tua had almost 300 yards. Trevor Lawrence had almost 350. Etienne had 3 touchdowns.
Oh yeah,
he
was great in the red zone.
What was that kid's name? Justin Fields? No, not Justin.
Justin Ross.
Justin Ross.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Justin Fields is the quarterback.
Oh yeah. No, I was talking to some friends before the game because they're more NFL fans. They're not big college football fans. So what should we be looking for? Players, whatever. I'm like, I honestly believe that if we take both teams right now, from the freshmen to all the players, whatever, you might see like 30 people on an NFL roster at some point in these teams. Like that's how insanely good these teams are in regards to the recruited talent that's there. And so, I think we got a really nice firsthand look at a lot of.
I think we got 3 running backs that are probably going to be on rosters. 4 really.
Yeah,
Jacobs Harris, both Harrises.
Oh, for sure. Najee, I think, is the
Etienne.
best chance to be an NFL player. To me, just based on the skill that he has.
And you talk about being on rosters, and I know there's probably more down the line here, but I'm starting to kind of lose faith in Tua.
Yeah,
It's easy to look great against Western Carolina and Louisiana Lafayette and even the Vanderbilt and the Tennessee. But, you talked about it, we talked about it. We were at the hockey game. And, in the games that matter and against the competition that you'll probably be facing on Sundays, he's looked suspect.
Yep, he has a long way to go. There's no question.
Great, he's young, and the problem is I may, and I don't know if this is the case, I may only believe this because of who he was suited up against and the fact that Trevor Lawrence just dwarfed him in the sense of 347, 3 touchdowns, didn't seem to ever really have an issue with Nick Saban's defense. And I don't want to pin that against him. I'm sure he will be an NFL quarterback.
Sure.
But just his motion, the way he throws the ball, it just none of that really makes me feel like he's a first round NFL quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think there's still a lot of unknown with him and a lot of development that's needed. And
feels like an RPO guy, and he's not fast enough, in my opinion, to be an RPO guy.
No. He needs to be more of a pocket passer if he's going to be successful at the next level.
And his arm, his release point is awful.
Yeah, and he's got a bit of a windup too. Yeah, no, there's definitely some knocks on Tua. There's no
he's
question.
Far and away the best quarterback in 20 years for Alabama. Or I don't even
sure
who's the best quarterback to come out of Alabama in the last. Since Joe Namath.
I don't know. They've had these collection of kind of mediocre, sort of weird white dudes. I don't even know.
Racist.
Yeah, well, that's the reality. So I'm not quite sure who you would be the best. Well, the guy that McCarron, right? He's, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
And the book's still out, really?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with the best. He seemed like he had the pretty decent skill set, but
Blake Sims wasn't white.
Yeah, okay.
Let's go down the line here. We have Tua, Jalen Hurts, black guy. Well, Hawaiian guy, black guy. Blake Barnett, Jake Coker, Blake Sims, A.J. McCarron, Greg McElroy, John Parker Wilson, Brody.
Those are my guys.
Brody
That's
Croyle,
what I'm talking about, yeah.
Freddie Kitchens.
Oh, nice.
New Browns head coach, 95 and 97.
Another slow white dude.
Yeah. A lot of guys who don't have links on Wikipedia here. John David Phillips. I'm trying to think of any. Yeah. Mike Shula. Nothing. Really, a long line of nothing NFL. Ken Stabler, 1966. There you go. That's Ken Stabler, I didn't know Bart Starr played for Alabama.
I had no idea either.
Yeah, Ken Stabler, Bart Starr, Joe Namath.
A lot of bad. No, Tua is definitely way up there. And again, I think the talent level around Tua as well is really significantly better than we've seen on offense. The offensive talent than we've seen in previous, Saban times as well. We've never seen a wide receiver core like this. We've never seen 2 or 3 guys that are all really next level type of talent. They've had one, big time receiver here and there, Ridley and Jones or whatever, but they've really just to have 2 or 3 guys that are definitely, big time caliber players and are already making hay. I mean, you could make a quote that Jerry Jeudy looks like he's ready to play, at the next level already, and it's pretty impressive.
You can make a lot of case for a lot of these guys that are ready to play.
That's true.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy looks pretty good. Devonta Smith's getting there.
And even another tight end, another big-time beating tight end with Irv Smith, who is just, looks fantastic as well. So early on, yeah,
I can go down the both defensive sides, and
same thing. That's why I said there might be 30 players. It's quite amazing. They have 3 running backs. That's what I'm saying. Tua has a lot of help as well around him too. Not only just a great offensive line like they've always had, but all of these skill position players that are just deep. It's not just 1 or 2 players. It's 3+.
Yeah.
So
yeah. All right, overreaction time. Dabo Swinney has eclipsed Nick Saban as the best coach in college football.
No. Yes, that is an overreaction. That we again looking at the body of work and how long it's taken to get to the this point now. While I admit that Dabo is definitely recruiting at the same level, and as a pure coach, probably right up there, with Saban. I think they're both, very good on-field coaches. Saban has established this pipeline, has established this dominance of dominating the Southeast for the most part, and then plucking people from California, Hawaii, New York, wherever the case is, to get, other great players. And I think that has been going on for too long to not have him still at the top. And again, if Swinney continues this road of dominance, then we can have another discussion, maybe 2, 3, 4 years. But no, at this point, I still think it's Nick Saban, and I think that Swinney is actually on still a significantly lower scale, just because he hasn't done it for the same time frame. Certainly looks good. It looks like it's really there. But let's see how things develop. And let's also see if the ACC can rebound a little bit here as well. They've had a couple of rough stretches now recently, and there are just teams. They're legit teams that are usually very good. Miami, Florida State, things like that are really on the down right now. So we'll see. But they always do. All those schools always rebound. So I'm sure they will.
Yeah, especially Taggart. He's got a target on his back.
He's got a long way to go. But a guy he's been relatively successful at every stop that he's been in. It's hard to give him Oregon because he was only there for a year. But certainly he looks like a very strong coach, and we'll see if the recruiting can be at the same level. Because you can be the greatest coach ever, but if you don't have the players, it's not going to matter against teams that do. But no, I like what Taggart is about. He seems like a guy that is he takes responsibility. He's an accountable guy. So I think that's a good deal there. And then we'll see what happens with Manny Diaz and this whole new look Miami team that's going to open it up on offense now. So Manny's looks like he's ready to go. He's got a spread coordinator, and it'll be fun.
I think the question really is for the ACC the next 2 years, I feel like it's Trevor Lawrence's world, and they're all just living in it.
That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like at this point. So we'll see if we get any rise from these schools that we're used to seeing that are good that have not been. So we'll see what happens with Georgia Tech.
Bold claim. You ready?
I'm ready.
Or actually, let's bold prop bet claim.
Yes.
Over under 1.5 losses in Trevor Lawrence's career. In his college career.
College career. Okay. And so, all right. Wow, 1.5 losses. So he's probably only going to play 2 more years. So
potentially 30 more games.
Yeah, the problem is, if you said it was like regular season, that would be certainly different. But now he's going to obviously be facing some very good teams in the playoff or a bowl, wherever it is. I mean, I would take the over just because that's a very
money.
small amount. Yeah, but like if the next wins and losses for Clemson probably next year is probably 11.5, and the over might be a favorite. I don't know.
They count bowls in that?
They don't. Just the 12 regular season games.
Yeah, I'll make a prop bet with you, long-term prop bet. Obviously, hopefully we know each other in 2 years.
Yeah.
Which I think we will. I'll take the under 1.5. So
Okay.
That'll be fun.
Well, yeah, that'll be a fun thing we can discuss as the years go on. It'll be good.
All right. Well, since we got to 2 things on our
Amazing how much time we can fill
on our agenda here, that's going to wrap up the podcast here with Tony Johnson, myself. We appreciate you listening. Obviously, we're excited to announce that 12 Ounce Sports Radio is getting big time partnership with Barn Burner. A lot of information still to come out. A lot of pieces working, crossing T's, dotting I's, but it sounds like we're going to be getting into a bigger realm, all of us here at 12 Ounce Sports Radio, so that we're all grateful for. And we want to say thank you, obviously, to everything 12 Ounce Sports has done. And it sounds like we'll be reaching a potential 50,000-plus listener base with Barn Burner Sports Network. I got to figure out bad job by me, a company man, not really getting all my chickens before I get onto the podcast.
We got some time.
But the more I know, we'll probably get that out to all the listeners. So anyways, for Tony Johnson, I am Aaron. We appreciate you listening. We will catch you on the next podcast.